Welcome back to the Off the Ball podcast. I'm your host, Clay Tillman, and on today's episode, we are going to be breaking down the 49ers versus Bills game, which was a winter wonderland. We'll get to that in a little bit. And then also, we'll break down Monday Night Football, or not break down, have a little preview of Monday Night Football, which will be the Bills versus Broncos game, which should be an interesting one. But before we get into that, as always, let's break down last night's game. So, like I said, it was a winter wonderland, winter fest, whatever you want to call it. All I know is that it was a downpour of snow. And the Bills end up winning in a blowout, 35-10. Wasn't a close game at all. So, let's break down the 49ers box score. And Brock Purdy, a performance from Brock Purdy, it was not good. 11 for 18, and 94 yards throwing. The only touchdown that the 49ers had was from Isaac Guerendo, who had 4 carries on 19 yards and 1 touchdown. And then their leading receiver was Juwan Jennings, 3 receptions, 456 yards. Now, if anybody sports betting, and you took the over on George Kittle, you lost. He had 1 reception for 7 yards last night. Not a good performance from him. And it's honestly not surprising. I mean, 49ers, they're located in San Francisco. Beautiful weather. You're going over to Buffalo. And I'd assume they were prepared for this. They knew this was going to happen. But it was a downpour of snow. And the conditions weren't good whatsoever. And they got demolished. They couldn't do anything offensively. And they couldn't do anything defensively. They were trapped. Now, since this loss, they are now 5-7. So, we are now in week 13. And we have 5 games left of the season. At 5-7, the 49ers probably won't make the playoffs. When we talk playoffs and we include the 49ers, I am scratching them. I am erasing them off the list. I don't think it's possible at this moment. One, they're probably going to have to win out. They probably are. They have 5 games left, and they're probably going to have to win out, and it's not the easiest schedule ever. But there is hope. There is definitely hope. Here is the hope. One, their division isn't good at all this season. I mean, Seattle's leading that division. And at 5-7, the 49ers are only 2 games behind Seattle. And they are 1 game behind the Rams and the Cardinals. It is a tight division. Anything could happen. The 49ers still could win. But here's the remaining schedule of the 49ers, and I don't believe they can win out. They can either go 5-0, or they can either win 9 games this season and cross their fingers in hopes that that's enough for them to win the division or potentially make a wild card in the NFC. It's tough. The NFC is tough. You have the Packers, you have the Vikings in the same division who have both only lost 2 games. You have the Commanders. You have the Commanders. It's most likely not possible unless they win their division. But here's the remainder of their schedule. They play the Bears next weekend, which should be a win for the 49ers. I believe they can take that. Then you go to the Rams, a division rival. It could go either way. And when I look at the Rams, they're fully healthy. They should be getting their tackle back. I think Rams take that, to be honest. Then you have the Dolphins. And then you have the Lions. And then lastly, the last game, they had the Cardinals. So in my perspective, I see 3 losses in the next 5 games. It could either be Rams, Dolphins. I think they beat the Dolphins. No, I think they lose to the Dolphins. I think they could beat the Rams. But those 2 teams, Rams or Dolphins, it can go either way. I don't think they have a chance against the Lions or the Cardinals. I think Cardinals are better than them this season. And then with the Lions, the Lions are the best team in the NFC. There's no arguing in that. I mean, they've only lost one game this season. So anything could happen. I throw my hands up. Anything could happen. But I don't think 49ers beat the Lions at all whatsoever. So if they do miss the playoffs, this will be the first time the 49ers miss the playoffs since the year 2020. And the funny thing is, the year before that, in 2019, they made it to the Super Bowl. And what a coincidence, because last season, they made it to the Super Bowl. And this season, they may not make the playoffs. They most likely won't. It's a funny, repetitive thing going on in San Francisco, but this season, it has been awful. Injuries have been a huge part of their transgression and how bad they've been overall. But, man, they're most likely going to have to win out. I don't think they can get a wild card just because how competitive that wild card position is in the NFC with the Packers and Vikings and Commanders fighting for that. So they're most likely going to have to win their division. So they're going to have to win out. And with how bad the 49ers have been this season, their rush defense hasn't been good really this season at all. Especially the last 2 weeks, they have been awful. James Cook had a fantastic game. We'll get to him in a second, the Bills running back. But the 49ers allowed 220 yards on the ground, 5.8 yards per carry on 38 attempts. So that's a problem. That is a definite problem, especially when it was snowing real badly. I don't know if it was slippery. I bet it was a little slippery. But they allowed 220 yards. That's a lot of yards. And this is the second week in a row that they've allowed 150 plus yards rushing in the last 2 games. So the rush defense hasn't been well. Nick Bosa has been out. That's been the biggest reason the rush defense has been bad. And this season, they are 11th in rush defense. They're not top 10. That doesn't sound terrible. And they allow 111 yards per game. That doesn't sound the worst, but on paper, the last few weeks, they have really allowed a lot of rushing yards, which has led them to a lot of losses this season. And then in this game overall, I mean, you have a Bills team who has lost 2 games this season. That's it. Who has a good wide receiver core, a MVP quarterback, a Pro Bowl running back, a pretty solid defense. I mean, you're going up against a Super Bowl contender. And with a team who, before this loss, still had a losing record, injury prone, it was a complete mismatch. There wasn't much competition going on, especially with the weather. I mean, it was their toughest game yet. Bills just come off a bye. It's their second consecutive long trip. And then, like I said, the snow. So it was a complete mismatch for them. It wasn't a fun game at all. I mean, Brock Purdy threw for less than 100 yards. They had 1 touchdown and it was on the ground from Isaac Guerrero, who only had 19 yards. Their leading receiver, I mean, I'm not hating on Juwan Jennings. I think he's one of the best wide receiver 3s in the game. But what was it, 56 yards in the air? Yeah, 56 yards on 3 receptions. So it wasn't a good game offensively. And then defensively, it wasn't good at all, especially that rush defense. They were not up to par. It was bad. And I come to the conclusion that this team won't make the playoffs. It's possible. They're going to have to win out. But you have the Lions, you have the Cardinals, and you have the Bears. It's going to be tough. Not really the Bears. You have the Rams and the Dolphins. I think they beat the Bears. But other than that, that's my wraps with the 49ers. I think it's over for them this season. Bears Sunday. We'll see how that goes. I think 49ers do win that game. But let's move on to the Bills box score, and what a game from Josh Allen. We'll talk about him in a minute. I just want to break down the box score from Josh Allen. Incredible. Not many passing yards. He was 13 for 17, 148 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, but 3 carries for 18 yards and 1 touchdown on the ground. And then he had a reception for 7 yards on 1 touchdown. Amari Cooper had a little backwards lateral to Josh Allen, and he ran it in. So it counted as a reception for him. On the box score, it said he had 0 receptions for 7 yards. And I was looking at it, I'm like, what? When did this happen? And I remembered, I was like, wait, yeah, Josh Allen did have a receiving touchdown. It was a backwards lateral. So I'm guessing that doesn't count as a reception. But he had 7 yards on 1 touchdown receiving. James Cook had a fantastic game. 14 carries, 107 yards, 1 touchdown. He's been brilliant. His brother's Dalvin Cook, and they are an athletic duo. Dalvin Cook is not in his prime anymore. He's gotten old, but James Cook is the other half, and he has been exciting and fun to watch for this Bills team. Ray Davis, they did excellent on the ground in general. I mean, Ray Davis had 11 carries as well for 63 yards and 1 touchdown. And then their only receiving touchdown other than Josh Allen's backwards lateral touchdown, but Mac Hollins had a receiving touchdown for 7 yards. And then their leading receiver was their tight end, Dawson Knox, 2 receptions on 56 yards receiving. So after this win, Bills all season have dominated. They've only lost 2 games, and they have clinched the AFC East. I think everybody saw this coming. I mean, I look at the beginning of the season. I mean, it seemed it was going to be competitive. I mean, I had high hopes for the Jets to be a potential candidate or contender for the playoffs. That flopped. I saw the Dolphins being a potential candidate for the playoffs. Relatively, that could still happen. I don't know, but Tua got injured, so that really set them back a lot. And then the Bills just plowed through their division and majority of the AFC and clinched their division. So since they've clinched the division, they're not done yet. You have the Chiefs, so they're hoping to potentially clinch that AFC spot, the number 1 AFC spot. So for them, they're crossing their fingers that the Chiefs hopefully lose another game for them to clinch that. But Bills this season have been dominant, like I said. In the it's their 6th game in a row with 30-plus points. That just shows you how dominant they've been offensively. It's been the longest streak this season, but it's also they've tied the franchise record for most or 30-plus points in a certain amount of games. And they also kept the 49ers to 10 points. So overall dominance. That's one word I describe this Bills team. Not just last night, this whole season, but dominance. This, in the past few years, ever since Josh Allen has been their quarterback, they've been a potential contender for the Super Bowl. The problem is you're going to face the Chiefs pretty much every single year in the postseason. And the past few seasons, I'm like, I think Chiefs will win. I think Chiefs will beat the Bills. I don't think the Bills have a chance. We're in 2024, and my mind has changed. It really is. I think this Bills team is legitimate. I think they're a better team, even though they have a worse record by 1 game. I think they're a better, more solid, better performing, better chemistry team than the Chiefs. They've had better performances. They've won by more points. Chiefs have had some, especially on Friday against the Raiders. They barely won. Excuse me. And this Bills team, really, in the wins they've had, they really haven't had games that are close. They've really blown out a lot of teams this season and have put up massive amounts of points. Six straight games with 30 plus points. That's absurd. That's a large amount. That's mind-blowing. They are incredible, and they are a legitimate Super Bowl contending team. Now, the AFC is tough. Like I said, you have the Chiefs, but don't forget you have the Ravens, Steelers. Those are my 4 teams that I think are legitimate contenders. Steelers, heck, I see them making a run in the postseason. And then you have the Ravens, Chiefs, and then the Bills themselves. It's going to be a fun and tough postseason for them, but I believe they can potentially, this is their year. I really think so, that this is their year to make the Super Bowl. And I'm not mad. I would love this. I love Josh Allen. I think he's a great QB. I love this team. They're fun to watch. They're a fun team. They're great. They're great. And I think they're better than the Chiefs. I think they're better than the Ravens. I think they're the best team in the AFC. And what I liked about the game is that we actually saw snow. We saw a lot of snow. So coming into the game, I'm just like, man, this is going to be a tough game for both teams. Wrong. Bills blow them out. The snow didn't harm them whatsoever. I mean, in the beginning of the game, they had a 3-and-out. They gave up a field goal. But other than that, they controlled majority of the game. They had they allowed 3 fumbles. They forced 3 fumbles, and they did not allow a drive more than 6 plays in the second half. Incredible. They really emphasized what it looks like to stop a offense. 6 drives. I mean, not 6 drives. 6 plays only, a maximum in the second half. And they controlled the game. 35-10 win. And I want to move on to Josh Allen and really just emphasize what a season he's had. This has been his best season. He is a legitimate candidate for MVP. Jim Kelly, Hall of Famer, one of the best Bills quarterback, I should say, to ever play for the Buffalo Bills. But Josh Allen passed him in touchdown passes this past game. Josh Allen, he's the 5th player and the only quarterback since 1970 to score a passing touchdown and a receiving touchdown and a rushing touchdown. He joins CMC, Christian McCaffrey. He joins Hall of Famer LaDainian Tomlinson. He joins David Patton, and he also joins Hall of Famer Walter Payton. There's more to come. He was the first player ever in multiple games to have 2 passing touchdowns and a receiving touchdown. He's done this in multiple games. Josh Allen is leading a team with Amari Cooper, but before they had Amari Cooper, you had Keon Coleman, you had Shakir, you have Dalton Kincaid, you have Dawson. You don't have the best receiving squad in the whole NFL. You were missing James Cook for a while. You led your team. And for him to be the power horse, for him to be in charge of that offense, he did a heck of a job. And for me to say that this man shouldn't be on the MVP list is an insult to his game. I think he's been incredible. I also think there's a lot of better candidates, or I would say tied with him. I mean, in my opinion, the other true candidate is Saquon Barkley, who had a fantastic game last night or yesterday. Last week, I said Saquon Barkley should be MVP, but after watching this game, I think Josh Allen should have it now. It's going to be neck and neck. After every single week, they perform at an elite ability to push them further and further in that MVP cell. And right now, in my opinion, Josh Allen is the 2024 MVP. He's been incredible. This is the best Josh Allen we've seen in his career, and they are on a mission to win the Super Bowl. And like I've said, I think they're better than the reigning Super Bowl champs in Kansas City. I think they're better than the Baltimore Ravens. I think they're better than the Steelers. They're the best team in the AFC. And it may be hard to argue about that. I mean, you could say the Chiefs, you could say the Ravens. This Bills team has blown teams out. 30 plus points in 6 straight games. They've done it. And they do it at a Super Bowl. They do it at a Super Bowl level, and Josh Allen's performing at an MVP level. He's been incredible, and I love it. He is one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch. I think he's a bit underrated, but this season, if anybody's going to win MVP, I think this is Josh Allen's season. They play the Rams Sunday, which I think they'll win as well. But that's it for the breakdown of the game from last night, 49ers and Bills. Let's now walk through tonight. We have the Browns versus Broncos. Broncos has been on a tear. They've been the most surprising team this season. Bo Nix has been the most surprising rookie quarterback this season. Between him and Jaden Daniels for Offensive Rookie of the Year, I think it will be Jaden Daniels. But don't be surprised if Bo Nix takes it, because he's been surprising. He's been incredible. He's been very fun to watch. But before we get into that, let's start with the Browns. So offensively, Jameis Winston has been their guy. In Week 12, he had 1 interception, and this is against the Steelers, by the way. They beat them. They had 1 interception. He did. 219 yards, 8.1 yards per average on a 76 rate. So he has been very solid for them ever since Deshaun Watson has been out. Jameis Winston has taken that role, and he's taken that role at a potential starter, a potential starter for this Browns team. They're not going to make the playoffs. We're not going to talk about that, but he's definitely looked better than what Deshaun Watson looked like when he started. He's been consistent. They beat the Steelers. Big props to the defense though, but they really kept pace with the Steelers offense and beat them. Jerry Jeudy had a great game against the Steelers. 6 targets on 6 receptions on 85 yards. And then in 4 straight games, Jerry Jeudy has been their wide receiver 1. He's had 70-plus yards in 4 straight games, so he's been very consistent for them. A great pickup. He came from the Broncos, and he has been a very solid and reliable receiver for that Browns team ever since Amari Cooper was traded. Nick Chubb coming back from injury. I look at Nick Chubb. I don't see that athleticism that I saw from previous years, but he was pretty valuable for them against the Steelers. Had 2 touchdowns, 20 attempts for 59 yards on 3 yards per carry. But his longest yard was only 7 yards. So he hasn't been the most prominent, the most efficient running back. It's really been a lot through the air and what they can do through that, and their defense clouding the Steelers offense in that game. But they definitely kept up and they won the game. So props to the Browns offense. But their defense have been a show. This season, they haven't been the best defense. They are 22nd in points allowed, 24.3 points per game. And in the red zone, they are 22nd as well. In week 12, they allowed 19 points versus the Steelers, which was pretty good, which gave them the win. Their pass defense versus Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson threw for 270 yards on a 118.7 rate. And this season, they allow around 100 rate, which puts them 25th in the league. Their pass rush has been fantastic. Myles Garrett has been the truck and has been the leader of the herd for that. Against the Steelers, they had 4 sacks on 28 pass attempts, and Myles Garrett had 3 of those sacks. And this season, before Sunday, he was third in sacks. He could be down the list a little bit, but he could get back up in this game. We'll have to see. But he had a fantastic game. We really saw a standout from Myles Garrett. We really haven't seen a brilliant game from him this season after winning Defensive Player of the Year. But after after the game against the Steelers, he was pushed up to second in Defensive Player of the Year voting and odds behind TJ Watt. So he has been fantastic in the last few games. Also, the rush defense, 27 attempts on 120 yards. That's 3.5 yards per carry on 1 touchdown. So not the best rush defense from them against the Steelers. But their offense has been solid, and overall their defense has been great in the past few weeks. Let's move on to the Broncos, who have been very, very surprising. So Bo Nix, week 12 versus the Falcons, played great. 273 yards through the air on 2 touchdowns on a 94.6 rate. Their team in general has had 29 points in back-to-back games, which has been fantastic for them and which has put them up in a potential wild card spot in the AFC. In the last 2 games, they've taken 1 sack, so they've been good in blocking and preventing Bo Nix from getting sacked, that offensive line. Cortland Sutton had a great game against the Falcons, 10 targets, 8 receptions, 97 yards, and 2 touchdowns from him. Devon Vele had a good game. He's a rookie. He's been an outstanding rookie when it comes to the wide receiver position. He had 9 targets, 6 receptions, 80 yards for them against the Falcons. And then Marvin Mims Jr., who was a rookie last season, had a Pro Bowl type season last year, but he has had 40-plus yards in back-to-back games, so he has been very reliable and valuable for them in the past few games. And then Jaleel McLaughlin had a good game as well, 7 attempts, 44 yards, and 6.3 yards per carry on the ground. Let's move on to the defense, who has been fantastic for the Broncos. So the past 3 games, they've allowed under 20 points per game. This season, they are first in points per game allowed, 16.8. I'm sorry, they're not first. They're third in points allowed, 0.8 points per game. But their pass defense has been excellent. They allowed 1 touchdown last game, 1 interception, 6.2 yards per average on a 75 rate, and they allow a little bit over an 84.5 rate, which makes them 11th in the NFL. And then their pass rush has been excellent. So last game against the Falcons, they allowed 5 sacks on 10 QB hits. And then this season, they're number 1 in sacks, 44 sacks. And Nick Bonito has been their leader in that. He's been fantastic. He should get his first Pro Bowl appearance this season. So offensively, defensively, this team is looking like a legitimate candidate for that wild card position in the AFC. And they're a fun young team to watch. Bo Nix will be a star potentially in this league. I mean, he's had a fantastic season. He's their franchise. He's their future. This young defense has been great. They're number one in sacks, and their offense is getting better and better each week. So it's been fun. It's been interesting. We'll have to see how this game goes. But I think the Broncos win 27-15 against the Browns. Hope y'all enjoyed the podcast. If y'all did, make sure to subscribe, follow whatever y'all do, and whatever podcast app you're listening on. Please continue to share. Also, go follow all my socials, Off the Ball with Clay Tillman on Instagram, TikTok, and yeah, that's about it. Hope y'all enjoyed, and I'll see you next time on the Off the Ball podcast. Hope y'all have a good day.